West Ham were relegated from the Premier League. Considering a few years ago they were winning European trophies, things are pretty bleak for West Ham fans right now. Until now, because they have just hired me as their new manager. And I have a philosophy that I abide by called the youth to gold method. This means that I will never sign a player who is 20 years old or older. And from season 2, I would look to offload any player 30 or above. From this vision, my plan is to not only take West Ham onto Premier League glory, but to win the Champions League with them too. Now, this is a West Ham team that realistically should absolutely walk the championship. A lot of these players are fantastic Premier League players, but a lot of them are not going to make it past this season number 1 in the transfer window, because we're going to try and offload as many players as possible. If you're looking at just the ages alone, the youth to gold method, by the time we get to season number 2, that is there. 14 players already that we would need to offload straight away, including, of course, Jarrod Bowen. A player that for the earlier years I'm definitely going to try and build the team around and keep is Matheus Fernandes, though. Of course, he's only 21 years of age. He is the future of this club. If we can start to bring in a lot of players around him, eventually we can sell him for a huge profit once we find a future replacement. For now, though, the task of offloading the current crop began with Jarrod Bowen bid coming in from Chelsea. And although it's only £12.75 million, I can't be too picky, and I just let him go and off the wages. We also offloaded Kyle Walker-Peters too to Brentford for £18 million as well. And to replace him, I paid £10 million less on an 18-year-old in Daniel Bajaki, who from Benfica could be excellent in the future. We also brought in Karim Koulibaly for just £7 million as well as a quality left-sided centre-back from Werder Bremen. As well as potentially the best signing of the window, Spittin Niceater, who is only 18 years old and plays in multiple positions for just £2 million. Those were the only signings we made, so we set up a 4-3-3 which pushes Fernandes forward out of position, so that he already starts attacks in an optimal position. My optimism drained very quickly, however, in the first few games of the season, as we dropped points on the opening day to Derby, lost our third game to Middlesbrough at home, and drew the fourth game against Portsmouth, again at home. September started with the transfer window closing and 2 more draws in the Championship. But just when I thought my time in the West Ham dugout was going to be a short one, Tati Castellanos found his feet and began scoring. Against Blackburn, his brace secured a 2-0 win, and he then scored 2 more in a 4-0 away win against Stoke, and he ended the month with a hat-trick against Millwall, again in a 3-1 victory. In terms of the new players, Spittin Niceater struggled at first, but eventually once he settled in, we began to really contribute from the left-hand side as well, and he picked up 7 goals by the new year. Our improved form wasn't perfect though. We were still dropping points fairly often and found ourselves in 5th place with 19 games remaining. From the turn of the new year, however, our form massively improved, and again it was thanks to Castellanos, who continued to score goals and winning points for West Ham on his own. As we breezed through January, winning all 5 games, including a 2-1 win in the FA Cup third round, where he even scored 2 goals. Although February started with a draw to Blackburn, the rest of the month was almost perfect again, with the only bad result being a 2-1 loss in the 4th round of the FA Cup to Manchester City, and it was played at the Etihad. Outside of that, it was another 5 games in the Championship in a very busy 28-day month, which ended with 5 wins and another 8 Castellanos goals, which takes him up to 35 goals in just 35 games this season, and takes West Ham up to 2nd place, chasing Norwich for top spot with just 9 games remaining. March started with nothing new, as both Castellanos and Niceater both got on the score sheet in a win over Wrexham, and the month itself consisted of 4 league games where only 2 points were dropped, with a draw against Derby County. This kept the pressure on Norwich, and a 2-1 win against Middlesbrough was a big win that kept 1st place in our sights at the beginning of April. And the month consisted of 2 more victories either side of a 3-2 loss to Southampton after taking the lead twice in that game. However, with just 1 game remaining, an away trip to QPR stands in our way of being crowned winners of the Championship. This of course being the first step in achieving our ultimate goal, but an important one nonetheless. Going up in 2nd place is boring, we want that trophy. And in a very cagey game in which we just needed a result unless Norwich lost or drew anyway, there was just 1 goal scored by the new signing Niceater, and a very good first season for him. So step 1 of getting ourselves back into the Premier League is complete, and the hard work starts now. The offloading of every player close to or over 30 and replacing them with teenagers going into the Premier League. Castellanos ended the season with 41 goals in 44 games, an insane tally for the man. Niceater had a decent season too, with 11 goals and 9 assists, as well as a bit of development. But we have budgets, and a big wage budget too, which is only going to get bigger with player sales. And there's going to be a lot of them. Unfortunately, one of our better players in Wan-Bissaka leaves the club for 26.5 million, given that he is now 29. However, he is in a list of 9 total players that we need to offload this summer to comply with our youth to go rules. We do already have his replacement lined up, of course, who we signed last season and bedded into the team slowly with 20 appearances so far this year. And while a lot of those transfers out started to happen, the transfers in were way more exciting. First up was Carlos Varela, a Portuguese winger who can play on both sides and only cost us £5.5 million from Zagreb. Brazilian midfielder Zé Lucas then signed from Sporting Recife for just £4 million, and he has bags of potential too, with a great personality to develop. Because in case you didn't know, personalities in Football Manager is what drives the progression to reach their full potential, and we're looking for an attribute called professionalism, which you can't see on the game, but you can kind of see it in personalities. For instance, Zé Lucas here has a fairly professional personality, which suggests his professionalism is rather high. He'll train better, he'll play better, and he'll develop easier. I utilised the loan market too this summer, bringing in Mfuni from Manchester City to help at the back, as well as Rio Ngamoa, who I'm hoping will enjoy his time here so much that I can permanently sign him next season. The most money I spent on a player this season though was Nathan Decat. Anderlecht played hardball and I really wanted the player, so we forked out £36.5 million. So far the team is looking great ahead of the new season, but there's still some left in the transfer budget. But again, my target's current clubs are being difficult. With Castellanos being 28, I wanted to bring in Kamada from AC Milan, but the club kept rejecting any offers I had for him. And even the player himself wanted to make the move and handed in a transfer request as well. While this saga unfolded, we brought in 3 more players for the squad, including a backup goalkeeper, a backup right back, and Christopher Cups at centre back, who I'm tempted to start all season, totaling for £10.5 million. The season even began and we were still without Kamada, drawing our first Premier League game 1-1 with Leeds United and losing our next fixture against Bournemouth. My worry of us not scoring any goals halted in the next 2 Premier League fixtures as we destroyed Norwich 3-0 at home and then went to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium stealing a draw, even being down to 10 men for 80 minutes. But Castellanos has only scored 1 goal so far and we've got no backup. And so reluctantly at the very end of the transfer window, we gave AC Milan way more money than what we wanted to through installments for one of the hottest young strikers in Europe, securing the signature of Francesco Kamada for £40 million. The impact he made on the side wasn't instant though, and in fact he didn't end up scoring his first goal for the club until December in a 2-1 loss to Brighton. An accumulation of getting in match fitness as well as first team opportunities with Castellanos still in the side. But it was January where the young Italian really found his feet, scoring in the 1-1 draw with Tottenham Hotspur, both of our goals in a 2-2 draw against Bournemouth, and even the only goal of the game against Manchester City at the end of January at the Etihad, as we hoped this would be the thing that kicked on this season. We were doing well as it stands, 12th place in February and even 34 points with 11 games remaining. Security, which was the aim for this season in the Premier League, looked impossible for us to screw up. Our form took a lot of ups and downs into the final months, but with a standout performances from Diouf at left back, Rio in front of him, and occasionally Kamada, we powered through the rest of the Premier League campaign, finishing the season in 11th place. But our season didn't actually end there, because back in January we defeated Arsenal in the first round of the FA Cup 1-0, then followed that with Fulham in the 4th round, Burnley in the 5th round, and then we knocked out Manchester City in the quarter-finals of the FA Cup 3-2, with Kamada scoring a brace. And at Wembley Stadium for the semi-final, another back-and-forth 5-goal thriller against Everton also ended 3-2 in our favour, with another goal from Kamada, as we now reach the final against Newcastle. Now, we've just played Newcastle on the final day of the Premier League campaign and they defeated us 3-1, but anything can happen in an FA Cup final, such as Rio Ngamoa scoring within the first minute. Our smiles lasted until the 29th though, when Joelinton found an equaliser for Newcastle, and just before half-time, Jacob Ramsey found a second to put them in the lead. Unfortunately for us, we couldn't find our way back into the game, but I was still proud of our young lads in what could have been a very difficult first season without all the experienced departures, but there were still some exciting times ahead. Because this season we also went through a board takeover, where French tycoon investor Matteo Lafont successfully completed the takeover of the club and promised promised that he will stop at nothing to make West Ham a dominant force in domestic and continental football. In terms of departures, this summer only one has to be made in Castellanos, who's now turning 30 in October. According to our squad planner though, we are slightly lacking depth in 3 different positions. And our board have given us a super £98 million budget to spend this transfer window. However, our scouts have been in and around the world and found some absolute bargains that I really want to bring to the club. Because they found an incredible Peruvian striker at just 17 years old whose value is less than 50k. In fact, in my recruitment focuses, I found that the amount of South Americans were absolutely outstanding. And this was as simple as setting up a focus for players up to the age of 19 as an ongoing assignment in South America's North region. And given that the scout who found him is my chief scout, Stefan Carell, who is outstanding as a judging player potential, I have to put a bid in for him. Speaking of bids, we have 2 huge offers coming in for 28-year-old Todibo and striker Castellanos from Ipswich Town that we both have to accept. And by the time our first game of the season came around at the start of the Premier League campaign against Manchester United, no fewer than 13 players had signed for the club, with Edgar Maceda also joining in January when he turns 18 in Peru. Only one of these new signings has actually made an impact in the starting 11 on the opening day though, that being Amara Diouf from Senegal, who signed for £8.5 million just before he turned 20 to replace Ngamoa, who sadly didn't want to join us permanently, although Kenneth Icon is probably the first replacement midfielder that we brought in from Hertha Berlin for £16 million too. In terms of other prospects expected to feature, Harry Gray is a signing that cost us nearly £40 million from Leeds, but is a homegrown talent and plays in multiple positions. And with lots of other signings that for now will play in the youth team or go out on loan, we can concentrate on the season, including our opening win against Manchester United after Cup scores the only goal. One player who really enjoyed and made the most out of his start to the season was Spittin Niceater. Last season he was rather quiet, but this year he started off on fire, getting himself a hat-trick against Coventry in the second game in a 5-0 win. Even after 6 games, we were all surprised with how well we had started, only losing 2 out of our last 3 games against Villa and Liverpool. Our form really became impressive in the colder months. November was a perfect month outside of a 1-0 defeat at the Etihad, followed by a December that included just 1 loss in just 8 games against Chelsea. A month that consisted of wins against both Tottenham and Manchester United with goals from Kamada. And January continued that rich vein of form with a big win against Liverpool in the league campaign and in the Carabao Cup semi-final first leg. And we were still clinging on to the top 5 heading into February. Frustratingly, that month started with a defeat against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg, and they knocked us out on penalties. And after eliminating Reading, Tottenham and Everton in the FA Cup, it was Brentford where we fell in the FA Cup quarter-final stage 1-0. But that doesn't mean our season is over, because we are fighting after a couple of bad months of form for a European spot in the Premier League, and a massive 4-3 win at Stamford Bridge has kicked us into gear with a 96th minute winner from new signing Carlos Stevens. We followed this up with a 2-0 win against Nottingham Forest thanks to goals from Kamada and Mateus Fernandes, and a 1-0 away win against Crystal Palace when Pedrosa from right back scored the winner. And with a game in hand, we are in 7th place and only 3 points behind Chelsea in 4th. We smashed our game in hand as well, beating Brentford 5-0 with 2 of the goals scored by Mateus Fernandes, who stepped up this season as a real leader. Going into the next fixture on a 4-game winning streak, we then defeated Everton at their ground 2-1, with Niceater and Somerville getting 1 each, and then jumped up into the top 4 spot with a massive win over Manchester City coming from behind thanks to Kamada and Icon's goals. This took us to the final day of the league campaign with an almost guarantee of Champions League football, but it didn't stop potentially the game of the season from happening, as 6 goals in the second half alone in our visit to Brighton ended in an 89th minute equaliser and a 99th minute winner for the Seagulls as they beat us 4-3. Even still, 5th place should be enough to qualify for the Champions League next season, in what was a fantastic year for us. In terms of goals, Kamada has led the line really well this season, and it's easy to see why when you notice how well he has developed in just 2 seasons, still only 21, and still with a lot to give. Spitting Neissetter is another player that has really shone this last season and became a first-team regular after a season of sitting on the bench last year. And out of the 3 midfielders that we have brought in recently, Zé Lucas' development has impressed me the most, and there are also some big clubs sniffing around him, including Real Madrid. The board continue to back us though and give us another £70 million to spend this summer. As predicted, bids were coming into the club for players I wasn't yet ready to sell, such as Zé Lucas. There were a couple of players who came through the academy who I also had my eye on and sent out for first team football on loan too. And thanks to my scouts again working their magic, we had a short list of players from all around the world to approach this season or next, depending on personal terms. Players coming in though included a £9.5 million signing in Lukas Gleichner, a German defender who looks rather good for his age with bags of potential. David Hubner was a risk given that his personality doesn't suggest he has a high professionalism, but for £7.5 million I took the chance. There was no risk however with Oliver Kowalski, a Polish midfielder at Bodo Glimt who looks incredible already, loaned back to the club for the rest of the season with a perfectionist personality for just £4.3 million. The most we actually spent on a player this season was Enrique Lopez, who cost £11 million from Mexican side Monterrey. My only concern with him is that his height and jumping reach, given that he is a centre-back. Many talents at the club are still developing for now, but 2 new signings do come into the first team this season in what could be a massive year in the Champions League. Although for the sake of my job, I reluctantly rejected a £100 million bid for Zé Lucas on deadline day, mainly because I knew without him we would struggle to qualify for the Champions League again this season. We don't have the players ready and waiting to take his position yet, which is crucial when selling players in the youth to go method. We are a season or 2 away from that yet, and with us already taking risk in defence with new signings, I thought we'd be better off with a more experienced midfield, and this was clearly the right decision given our form through to January in the Premier League, as we sat in 3rd place and thriving so far this season despite European football distracting us midweek. Speaking of which, we had a very mixed set of performances in the league phase of the Champions League, which started off with a win against Club Brugge in Belgium and was followed by a 1-0 loss in Rome against Roma. We looked doomed as we lost our next 2 games against Real Madrid at home and Frankfurt away, meaning we had just 3 points from 4 games. But this is where we got 6 crucial points, defeating Lazio thanks to Kamada's goal at home, as well as Leipzig in a 2-1 win. A 6-1 hammering in Barcelona put our qualification in question yet again with just 1 game remaining, but the young Italian striker came through for us, scoring 2 goals against Lyon to pick up 4 wins from our 8 games, qualifying for the knockout playoffs in 18th spot with 12 points. Back in the Premier League and with a 3rd round exit in the FA Cup, we were able to solely focus on the league and the Champions League for the second half of the season, and that might have benefited us at this stage, as our form in the Premier League was rather impressive. March included 3 wins and just 1 loss against Manchester City, and in April 3 more wins came, including a huge 2-1 win at Anfield thanks to a 95th minute winner from Kamada that sent us into the final month in the top 4. A 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge kept it nervy, but then a 1-0 win against Brighton and a final day victory at home to Bristol City kept our Champions League spot for next year, finishing in 4th place and only 7 points behind leaders Manchester City too. But it was our run in the Champions League that may shock quite a lot of you. The knockout playoffs seen a tough draw against AC Milan, where the first leg at home finished 2-1 thanks to Varella's goal in the 88th minute and a Neissetter penalty in the 93rd. The second leg included more late goals, as AC Milan equalised on aggregate in the 86th minute, but Carlos Varela once again scored a winner in the 94th to send us through. The round of 16 started with a home leg against Liverpool and a potential performance of the season, as we battered them 4-1 with 4 different goal scorers. And better yet, we then went to Anfield in the second leg and beat them 2-1 again to go through to the quarterfinals. And the quarterfinals was against Roma, so revenge was on the cards after they defeated us in the league phase, and Kamada also seemed to have that on his mind as he blasted in 2 goals in Rome to set up a home second leg with a 2-goal advantage. Within 6 minutes of that second leg, Niceter scored to make it 3-0 on aggregate, and Matheus Fernandes secured our place in the semi-finals with a 4th. After the 4-0 aggregate win, the semi-final picked us against Spurs on a trip to London for the first leg, a cagey affair with just 1 goal scored by right-back David Huber. So we were just 90 minutes and a goal advantage away from a UEFA Champions League final, but a Liam Delap goal from Tottenham took the game into extra time. That's when we finally woke up. Kamada scored to put us back in the lead, and Christopher Cup scored a second just 2 minutes later, and West Ham are in the final of the Champions League in our first season. And our opponents are none other than Premier League rivals Arsenal. Team-wise, it's a very recognisable Arsenal side with a few additions, whereas we also have our strongest team available too, but still yet to really challenge at the biggest level. Either way, we've got here on merit, knocking out some of the biggest teams in Europe. And we've beaten Arsenal before in the league as well. However, even with that all being said, I still expected a really tough game, and imagine the shock of the Arsenal fans' faces when Francesco Kamada pulled it back and Matheus Fernandes bends in a corker after just 14 minutes, and it's 1-0 West Ham. We went into half-time still a goal up, but the Arsenal side came out with a lot more intensity in the second half, and their attacks were a lot more direct, with Marmoush constantly attacking down our right-hand side, and eventually on the hour mark, Declan Rice's side-footed shot found the right side of the post for him. Keeper couldn't do anything about that, and it's 1-1. 2 minutes later though, a free kick from Arsenal with Declan Rice over the ball. His shot was blocked, as was Erdegaard's, and it fell to Marmoush, and we did well to block our third effort. But unfortunately, William Saliba showed the most composure of all 4 players, making space to put himself and Arsenal 2-1 up. We threw everything at them for the final 20 minutes and made a lot of changes, and in the 90th minute, one finally paid off, as Diouf beautifully turned and smashed in an equaliser. This took the match into extra time, but with no goals, the Champions League final would be decided on penalties. And while I was hoping Gabriel would be there to take the 5th Arsenal penalty, I realised he's no longer in the squad. Even still, 3 penalties were dispatched well before Carlos Varela's miss for West Ham. Declan Rice put his away against his former club, as did Zé Lucas, but we needed someone to miss. Keith Smith put his perfectly in the top corner, and Diouf kept the pressure on. And finally, Hermansen saved Eze's penalty, 4-3, and we need to score this to send it to sudden death. With the pressure on Kowalski, our Polish midfielder, who's had a fantastic season since coming back from loan, stepping up, but David Raya saves. And Arsenal are crowned Champions League winners. It's okay though, we never expected to get this far in a youth to gold after just 4 seasons. We are still 4 or 5 years away in terms of the plan of getting back here. We didn't lose, we just learned. Kamada had a fantastic season of goals, and the wingers all around him all contributed too, with Matheus Fernandes also doing excellent from midfield. There is interest in Kamada, but I don't really have a replacement lined up just yet, and the interest is also from Premier League side Manchester City, so I don't think it's a good time to cash in. Macheda, who I purchased a while back, is now 19, and after 2 long spells has not really developed into the player I hoped he would be by now from Peru. Harry Gray has been great from the right wing, but I'm unsure that he would put up Kamada's numbers as a lone striker. And out of all the other strikers that we have come through the youth academy or that I have bought, there still isn't one yet that stands out and deserves a shot just yet. There is also £100 million sitting in our transfer budget though, to splash on whatever our scouts have found, so strap in for another exciting transfer window. As it turned out, this summer window was a bit of a full-blown rebuild. Mads Hermansen left to go to Aston Villa for just 5.5 million. Amara Diouf also left to go to Sunderland for 27 million, which actually was a release clause. Kenneth Eichhorn also moved to Manchester United for 47 million, as did Matheus Fernandes, who left to go to Al Hilal for the same price, but they weren't the most expensive deal. That was reluctantly Francesco Kamada. After rejecting multiple bids, I finally accepted a £73 million bid from Manchester City for our star man. And the transfers in was a lot, so we're going to whip through them very quickly. 18-year-old English midfielder Joe Stronge joined from Ipswich Town for just £16 million. Loic Pinau is a French defender that we picked up from Saint Etienne, again for quite a cheap price of just 15 million. Matteo Girasol is a fantastic Italian midfielder that we picked up for just less than £20 million and has a model citizen personality. £26 million was spent on another Italian in being right back Davide Sperandino. from Napoli. Yamaguchi is a goalkeeper we picked up for just £4 million from Gamba Osaka. Striker-wise, we have picked up Nick Robinson from Aston Villa. He shares my last name and he's got a fairly professional personality, looks rather good, and he costs £17 million. George Villanueva has come from Boca Juniors as a left midfielder, looks fantastic from Argentina, £15 million, but we've loaned him back to Boca Juniors. Daniel Mustafa, exactly the same scenario to River Plate, who we've picked up for £10 million. Then we went big for Frank Stam, a goalkeeper from the Netherlands after selling our goalkeeper last season for £62 million. Perfectionist personality, unbelievable jump and reach. I think he's going to be better. We got ourselves another right back from Argentina, Jose Basile. Again, loaned back to Boca Juniors though. Looks fantastic and only cost us $20 million. And the final signing is a Brazilian midfielder that we picked up at the very end of the transfer window, 18 years old, called Netinho from Flamengo. Again, didn't cost us that much, just £5 million. So after the busiest window we've had so far, we've even decided to switch the system and go for a two-striker formation. However, considering we are UEFA Champions League finalists, our now unrecognisable team played like anything but. As in the first 4 games of the Premier League, we only picked up 4 points, losing to both Manchester City and Tottenham. There was a slight improvement going into November and December, after another bleak couple of months before there were some big wins, as a lot of the new signings found their feet finally, including Nick Robinson. But it was Spitzer Niceter who shone the most, getting 15 goals, playing up front in just the first half of the season. It's still nowhere near the level that West Ham were reaching last season by the end of January, as we sat in 8th place. However, our performance in the Champions League, the league phase itself, was a lot more comfortable than last season, starting with 2 wins against Legia Warszawa and Rangers and an amazing draw against PSG. Nick Robinson then scored 2 goals in a 3-2 win away from home against PSV, as well as 2 goals in the home tie against Shakhtar Donetsk, securing our progression. But another win against Feyenoord and another Nick Robinson goal put us odds on to finish in the top 8, which was secured on the final day with a win against Sporting after a 4-0 loss in between to Inter Milan. A fantastic 4th place finish with 6 wins and just 1 loss as we avoid the knockout playoffs. The round of 16 tie actually put us against Nice in France, with the first leg being played in France, which didn't start great for us as we found ourselves 3 goals down, somehow finding our way back into the game with Varela scoring in the 80th minute and Spitzer Niceter again in the 93rd. This gave us some hope for the second leg with a home tie and just 1 goal down on aggregate, but after going 1-0 behind on the night, we then needed 3 goals. Thankfully, Nathan Decat and Zé Lucas scored 2, and an own goal secured our progression to the quarter-final against Manchester City. And because of course he did, Francesco Camada scored the opening goal in a 2-1 defeat at home in the first leg. Thankfully, in the second leg in Manchester, he didn't even start. Erling Haaland was back. But either way, from minute 1 we equalised and even took the lead with a second on the night, putting us 3-2 up from Harry Gray. But in the second half and in the space of just 15 minutes, Manchester City scored 3 times, with Erling Haaland setting up Ben Ganondorf twice to knock us out of the Champions League. While this was disappointing, the Premier League form vastly improved in the second half of the season, with a big winning run in February into March, which only ended because of a 2-0 loss to Bournemouth. But once the Manchester City game in the Champions League had passed, we only dropped 2 points against Chelsea until the end of the season in May, with a win at Old Trafford and a 3-0 home win on the final day at Liverpool for our final 2 games, which helped us secure a 4th place finish and more Champions League football next season. Once again though, it was a different competition where we were thriving, because our FA Cup run consisted of a 6-0 victory over Luton in the 3rd round, followed by a 6-2 win over Chelsea in the 4th. We then defeated Sunderland and Newcastle in back-to-back rounds, before winning our semi-final in the finest of margins on penalties against Crystal Palace. And the final was against Manchester United, who we had just defeated 2 matches ago. In a very exciting game from the off, we opened up a 2-goal lead thanks to Villanueva, who I chanced starting for a change, and Zé Lucas. Manchester United pulled one back from Keenan Yildiz, but again Villanueva bagged a second to keep this 2-goal lead into the second half after his arrival from Boca Juniors. Tony Fernandes then made it 3-2 in the 65th minute, but Harry Gray, our MVP this season, found a 4th and final goal of the game. And just like that, we are FA Cup winners. Considering this was a difficult start to the season, and the fact that we rebuilt almost the whole team and have still come away with a 4th place and a trophy is pretty incredible. A part of me was worried that it's the wingers who scored more goals than our strikers, as Spitting Nicesetter was playing up front, but it's very much a transitional year built for development. And we are definitely seeing that in players like Girasol, who has been fantastic this year in his first season in the midfield. Defender Lucas Gleichner has also become a staple in our lineups, developing really well, but he may face competition in the future from academy prospect Lloyd Warren, who enjoyed an incredible season out on loan at Huddersfield. Budget-wise, we don't have to worry about money anymore, so again, it could be a fun window, because there are also some fantastic players in our recruitment focuses that we could sign this summer. Season 6 started like Season 5 did. Selling our best players included Harry Gray, who moved to Liverpool for 72 million. Spitting Nicesetter moved to the blue side of Merseyside for 30 million. And Somerville, who is now 29, also went to Aston Villa for 10 million. Two seemingly odd moves that I made was loaning both Nathan Decat and Zay Lucas, as I tried to integrate new midfielders into the team instead. However, I only actually signed 4 players to bring to the club. And Amancio Carimo from Mozambique cost me just 40k and is already out on loan at Wolves. Lekang cost me £5 million from Bodo Glimt and could be a promising right back, only aged 18 and with a perfectionist personality. I then paid £20 million for Ajax goalkeeper Hoholt, who will serve as my backup goalkeeper for this season. The big deal for us this summer though was £16 million for Inter Milan's left back Jotakot, a tied defender who rejected me 2 seasons ago to move to Inter for just £1.3 million. Either way, we now have a full 11 of new gen players and a couple that I need to introduce you to who make our starting 11. First off is Anthony Yakubu, who is a player that come through our youth academy like Lloyd Warren, who is out on loan this season, but Anthony is here and ready for first team football. Gino Moran is another player that we actually signed 2 seasons ago, but he hadn't arrived until January because he wasn't 18 from Argentina, and he cost us just 3.5 million. Once again, we did not start the season with the best of form. Our consistency really let us down, and the new squad of players took time to gel well together. It wasn't actually until November where I started to see an improvement, as we defeated Arsenal 2-1. December was also a great month outside of a loss to Chelsea, where we pulled off 4 Premier League wins and just another 2 draws in the busiest month of the calendar. It started to drop off again with our form in January with 3 losses in a row, and we fell down to 8th place. After starting off a bit dodgy, we once again had an excellent campaign in the league phase of the Champions League, winning 5 games including a 4-0 smashing of Leipzig in January with 2 goals from Daniel Mustafa, helping ourselves to a bye into the round of 16 as we finished in the top 8 yet again. However, our run in the Champions League this season consisted of a lot of Italian clubs, as we drew Juventus in the round of 16 and managed to pull off a 3-2 away win thanks to a Carlos Varela winner in the 91st minute, and then a 1-0 home win with Gino Moran scoring the only goal, seeing us through to the quarterfinals. AC Milan followed in said quarterfinals, and we could only pull off a 2-1 home win in the first leg, and we were punished for doing so because they kept us to a clean sheet in the second leg and scored 2, eliminating us from the competition. Shockingly for me was the performance and development of Matteo Girasol, who from midfield has so far been our top scorer. However, yet another academy product I want to highlight is Connor Williams, who is out on loan at Leeds United and has been another fantastic attacking midfielder who I may bring into next season. Going back to this season though, it looked like a lot of bad fortunes were following us as a semi-final exit to Arsenal in the FA Cup. And with our league form still inconsistent, we have 1 month left, we are still in 8th place. May included 1 loss, 1 draw and 1 win in our final fixture against Newcastle for a 7th place finish, which is as good as what we could get this season, so we have to tread carefully this summer. I do think our team is good enough to compete at the top of the Premier League. We're just missing that special something. Both our strikers are good, but they don't necessarily score the goals. Nick Robinson, for example, has only got 8 in 37 Premier League games. Edgar Makeda, Again, not too bad, hasn't developed as much, has got 10 in 35. Goals from midfield have been predominant throughout our season, but we're just missing that cutting edge up front. Even the wings, our players like Villanueva looks amazing, but has only got 9 goals all season with 10 assists. I could look at maybe using a player like Daniel Mustafa as more of a striker instead of a left winger and see how he does next season. But we have £145 million with a massive wage to go out there and buy the very best teenager that we can find. And as we know, our scouts have been doing so well in the last few years anyway to find those hidden pieces. And it's not like we need to upgrade our team. We've got 24 scouts now, all distributed across the world. So I don't think it's time to panic just yet. We've got a lot of players out on loan that we are going to look into bringing into the side and, of course, maybe sell them or integrate them into the team, as well as an abundance of players in the youth academy as well, including the under-21s, which is just full of fantastic players that we could look to bring in. I mean, Amancio Carimo has scored 16 goals out on loan this season at Wolves. He's not necessarily the best striker in terms of finishing or composure, but he's quick and he's already scoring. So I do think season 7 is going to be one of, if not the most important seasons that we have here at West Ham. I began selling 2 players again in Zé Lucas and Varela, who left to their new clubs for a combined £68 million. Coming into the club is Croatian striker Gabriel, who I only paid £14 million for, but there were complications with his visa. See, the government were actually going to kick him out because he wasn't subscribed to the Omega Luke channel. I don't know whether you are, but you don't want any complications around here. There were no problems with Catola, who joined for £20 million from Manchester City because he has been a lifetime subscriber since the very first youth to go with Strasbourg. As well as Machevsky, who we signed from Toulouse for £10 million and loaned back for the rest of the season. So with a new strike force and a few new players into the strongest 11, we were ready for another season. And we started the season in much better confidence than what we had in the last few, remaining unbeaten in the first couple of months. What we had this season, it seemed, was chemistry between the 2 strikers. The last couple of years, they have not worked together as a team and both struggled because of this. However, this season, Gabriel and Nick Robinson especially seems to enjoy playing together this first half of the season and are both benefiting from this, scoring 12 goals each by the turn of the new year. Backup strikers are doing well as well, and big wins against the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal are being settled by our strikers, which hasn't happened since we sold Kamada. And although we are 9 points behind Manchester City with a game in hand, we are in a much better spot than the 8th place we were this time last year. The Europa League was also a big success in the league phase as we won 8 games topping the whole thing. However, our run in the Europa League was cut way shorter than what I thought it would, as we drew Everton in the round of 16, and after drawing the first leg 1-1 at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, we then got another 1-1 draw in the second leg and lost on penalties. We did manage to make it into the Carabao Cup final though after knocking Everton out in the semi-final, and we went on to Wembley to face Manchester United in a game where we went 3-0 up, and at one point the result flattered our opponents to make it look like a much closer game, but either way, it's another trophy that we've won. March in general, outside of the cup win, was a bad month. We even ended it losing to Sunderland and Everton in the league, but April was a great month, starting in with the FA Cup quarter-final win over Swansea, and then defeated Coventry 3-0, Chelsea 3-1 at Stamford Bridge, Ipswich 5-0 and Aston Villa 5-1, and the Peruvian striker Macheda was finally living up to the hype to give us 3 strikers who were performing well. And better yet, we even caught up to the league leaders and overtook them with 5 games remaining. Everton caused us trouble again, beating us in the FA Cup semi-final 1-0, but it meant that we could solely focus on the Premier League, and we travelled to the Emirates and continued our amazing winning form, winning 2-0 ahead of another away game against Bournemouth. 2 goals from winger Villanueva and 2 goals from midfielder Kowalski, and we powered through another 3 points with Tottenham up next. We found ourselves at home 2-0 up, but Spurs pulled things back with 2 goals in 3 minutes to draw level. However, a second half clean sheet helped us to another 3 points when Gabriel scored one of 3 more goals to win 5-2. Manchester City, since we overtook them though, have been falling apart and dropping points left, right and centre. And with 2 games remaining against Liverpool and Manchester City, funny enough, we just needed 1 win and we could be crowned champions. First is Liverpool, who sit in a back five formation, which is usually a good matchup for this, but with this game being played at Anfield, it won't be an easy tie as we'd like. But a win and we lift the Premier League trophy for the first time before we even play Manchester City, and they'd have to give us the guard of honour. We failed to live up to expectations and our form when it mattered though, and unfortunately we lost this match 2-0. We are still very much in the driving seat on the final day, however, with only Manchester United able to overtake us because of our superior goal difference. So although City won't be giving us the guard of honour today, if they do beat us, they hand the title over to their biggest rivals anyway, so it's lose-lose for them. But we just want to make sure at the end of the match, we are lifting the title in front of our home fans. City had the better of the possession early on, but failed to create any meaningful chances, which is why on the 21st minute they'll be kicking themselves as Villanueva puts us 1-0 up. Second half, and it's the same combination down the left hand side as Yotacot finds Villanueva again to double our lead to make it 2-0. And our crowning moment, when this time our right side of midfield Moran scored the third and final goal to seal the win. And we have done it, Premier League winners and one trophy down out of the two we are aiming for. I knew at the end of last year that we might not have had a great season, but these players just needed more time. The youth to gold method needs patience, and this time it's clearly paid off, as West Ham United are champions of England, and next we target the Champions League. What a season in terms of development as well, by the way. George Villanueva, who scored two of the most important goals this season in that final game, is just 21, and the development just this season alone has been exceptional. I doubted Edgar Macheda from the last couple of seasons. He's had quiet seasons, but this season, 18 goals and 16 assists, considering he only started 30 games, is quite impressive. And finally we're starting to see a player there. Nick Robinson was solid. He was our top scorer this season. He's not our best player on the pitch though. That kind of is split between four players, with George Villanueva being one of them. But Yotacot I can't exactly consider success, considering we tried to get him for £1.3 million. He ended up costing us £60 million. But in 2 seasons, he has been exceptional for us. Luka Gleichner, though, I think is our big success story so far in this youth to gold. I mean, he's 22 years of age now, but he has been in our first team for 4 seasons, only costing us £9.5 million. And look how good his physical attributes are. That's incredible. Frank Stem's another one who we bought obviously for quite a lot of money, £62 million, but I definitely think that sort of risk was worth it. He was a good goalkeeper already though. In terms of players that obviously we've give game time to recently, Lloyd Warren and Anthony Yakubu, who come through the youth academy, have really benefited from their times this season. Lloyd Warren is absolutely incredible now at age 20, and Anthony Yakubu, 22 years of age, a little bit older, not quite as good I think, but still a valuable asset in our side. And Matteo Durasol is a final one that I want to sort of highlight here, because he has been incredible for the last couple of seasons, doing really well. £26 million was a big move and another risk from Juventus, but he scores so many goals from centre midfield, it's unbelievable. He's built up a nice little partnership with Joe Stronge in that midfield this season. And on the right, maybe somebody who doesn't get all the plaudits, but possibly should, in Gino Moran, the Argentinian midfielder who looks incredible this season. Only scored 9 goals and 8 assists, but has been putting in some fantastic performances. He cost £3.8 million 4 years ago. We've got £111 million with a massive wage budget to spend this season, but we've got so many players out on loan. I don't think we need to splash the cash too much. Maybe just buy a few youngsters. We've even got like Amancio Carimo, who's back this season on loan, who I might give game time to. He's been at Bayern Munich and actually scoring 5 goals in the Champions League, 19 overall. Either way though, again, my scouts are finding some fantastic players. A lot of them are quite pricey now, but we are still finding some real good ones. If I'm finding them with good personalities, I'm snapping them up. This summer, we say goodbye to Nathan Decat, who leaves to Chelsea for £30 million. Christopher Cupps also moved to Barcelona for just £25 million. And I then signed 3 players with perfectionist personalities, all with high potentials, and one was even from England too, as we signed him from Newcastle with extraordinary pace. I did then break the transfer record, signing Lauren Furman, who was at Manchester United for over £100 million. But he's an incredible player already and covers 2 positions. My final 2 signings were also loaned back to the clubs that they bought them from, but both again with good personalities and good potential. With a new defender coming in the door though, there is a big change that I've decided to make with our formation. I've removed the second striker and I've put him into a back five, with my thought process being in Europe it will make us much harder to beat. And it certainly looked that way from the evidence of the start of the season, as with the Community Shield, 3 league games and a Carabao Cup tie, we have yet to concede a goal. It seemed like a combination of winning the league last season and the new system was a deadly combo for the Premier League campaign. Within 24 games, we have only lost 2 games and drew 2. Gino Moran was fantastic from the right wing, picking up 14 goals to 13 assists, and returning striker Amancio Carimo scored 16 himself, while Villanueva was enjoying 11 goals and 10 assists from the left. More importantly though, we have the best defence record in the league, and we sat top of the league by 14 points with 14 games remaining. This also reflected on our European form too. We had the best league phase in our Champions League history, winning 7 games and drawing 1, including wins over Inter Milan and Barcelona, and only conceding 2 goals. It wasn't all good news, however. Aston Villa scored 2 late goals in the Carabao Cup final to lift the trophy in front of us. And Manchester City did the same thing in the quarter-final of the FA Cup, eliminating us from the competition. This did start to creep into our league form slightly as we began to give up silly points throughout February, March and April. Although we were still well within the driving seat despite conceding more goals than we wished to. We began our remaining 4 league games of the campaign with a huge 6-0 win over Bournemouth, meaning we just need 1 more win to secure the Premier League title. And with an away trip to Crystal Palace, we certainly fancied our chances in doing so, which we did in style, scoring after just 13 minutes and finishing the game 4-0 winners to lift back-to-back Premier League trophies. We even finished with a big 3-0 win over Arsenal on the final day of the season to extend our win by 14 points. But with the Premier League being won in dominant fashion, it's the Champions League that we are more concerned with. And after a battle against Lamine Yamal's Barcelona in the round of 16, we leave Barcelona in the first leg with a 3-2 advantage, thanks to a winning goal by academy player Sean Fowler. The second leg was again a very tight affair with just 1 goal between the 2 sides. Fortunately for us though, we picked up the 2-1 win on the night and advanced. This took us to a quarter-final matchup with Newcastle United and an away first leg once again, where right-back Jose Basil and Carimo got on the score sheet while our defence held on to another clean sheet. The same couldn't be said about the second leg, and in fact we completely crumbled at home, conceding after just 15 minutes and allowing Newcastle to level the score on aggregate to 2-2 just after half-time. Thankfully for us though, there was just enough stoppage time for a hero to make his name, and that was substitute Netinho, who bagged the winner in the 94th minute. Our hardest test yet was still to come, a semi-final matchup against Real Madrid, the most successful club in the competition's history, who have not won it for nearly 5 seasons, so they are hungrier than ever. But the first leg was at home and was another example of our incredibly strong defence, as we were just about clinical enough as Kowalski scored the opener in the 22nd minute, and while we kept another clean sheet, Carimo got a cheeky second to give us a great shot heading to Madrid. The biggest game of the season at the Bernabeu for these lads, and again they defended for their lives. An incredible performance as well, as West Ham held Real Madrid to 2 clean sheets in the Champions League semi-final and booked our spot in the final for the second time with a 0-0 draw. Our opponents, AC Milan, who had themselves built a squad full of fantastic young players, especially across their attacking positions, and even stole a goalkeeper target from me 2 years back, that's now the best goalkeeper in the world. But we are on hot form, and it's the champions of England against the champions of Italy for the biggest prize of all. We definitely started the better of the 2 sides, and within 5 minutes found ourselves in behind the AC Milan defence on 2 separate occasions, but both times failed to get a good shot on goal. After relentless attacks though, the deadlock was finally broken in style as Lloyd Warren smashed in a beauty from range to score the first goal. Milan looked panicky and overwhelmed, while we almost made it 2 just 2 minutes later. They finally got their own shot away from a set piece, but it didn't trouble Stam in goal. Our midfield began to control the game, and Girasol in particular began enjoying himself, and a superb ball over the top found Gabriel's run, whose touch and finish was just as fantastic. The second half looked a reflection of the first. We once again found space down the right hand side, and after multiple attempts on goal which shots were blocked, Moran's shot finally found a way through to make it 3-0. Moran then became the provider for Gabriel, who made it 4, before an excellent run got himself his second of the night in a man-of-the-match performance. And the AC Milan players and fans in the end were crying out for the full-time whistle, as we were completely dominant, winning the Champions League through the youth to gold method with West Ham after they were relegated. And I know full well you're all going to want this tactic for yourself. So I will make the save game file available where you can take the tactic on my patreon.com/megalootgaming or on the YouTube channel members, as a big thank you to everybody who helped support me on that level. But on screen right now is another video that I think you should check out.